Hello, friends. The most important thing happening in today's society, especially as an American citizen, is definitely if nothing has ever lived up to the PlayStation 2. If the PlayStation 2 was the greatest console of all time and it has no competition. So let's talk about that for 10 minutes instead of anything that actually matters. I'm being goofy because it feels like the world's on fire, but I'm fine. How about you? Let's react. The Gamer with an article 25 years later and nothing has lived up to the PlayStation 2. I feel like this is definitely nostalgia biases. The PlayStation 2, incredible console, and currently still shy of about 10 million units sold, is the best-selling console of all time. But I immediately saw this and I felt no. Like, I really do feel like the Switch currently has exceeded all expectations of any console ever. And I might just be coming from my own biased place, but as someone with their ear to the ground over the last 8 years covering this console, I really do feel like it has excelled and exceeded every other console in terms of not only sales, as we will eventually pass the PlayStation 2, I feel like, but also in its library. And I have some comparisons to pull up, but I do want to read this article, and there definitely is still, I feel like this title is a bit of hyperbole to get your attention, but I do feel like still the PlayStation 2 needs to be recognized as a console that changed gaming, that set the standard for a very long time. I really think that standard has only just now been topped with the Switch, and considering this released so long ago, that is such a Herculean achievement. And I do really appreciate the PlayStation 2, and it is one of my favorite consoles of all time, and I do agree it has one of the best game libraries of all time. I really do appreciate the PlayStation 2 a lot, and we wouldn't be where we are now without it. But nothing living up to it, I think, is the big claim. So let's take a look. I apologize profusely for how old I'm about to make you feel, but the PlayStation 2 celebrates its 25th birthday today. Wait, I actually did not know that. The Switch being the console that I think tops the PlayStation 2's efforts in library, for it to release essentially the same day is almost iconic. It's like that's the sweet spot for a video game console to be one of the best of all time, you know what I mean? From the beginning, PlayStation 2 dominated the generation, single-handedly booting Sega from the console market before leaving Xbox in the dust. Throughout its lifetime, the console would sell 160 million units and keep releasing software well into the PlayStation 4 era. That is true. It got support into PlayStation 4, which is crazy. Yeah, all the way into 2012. And then during the PlayStation 4 era, we got FIFA 14 and Pro Evolution Soccer 14. Kind of insane to think that those sports games were cross-releasing on PS2 and PS4. Those graphical differences are insane. PS2 was an arbiter of modern games. During the PS1, Sega Saturn, and the N64 days, now known as the fifth generation, it was clear the video games were in the state of transition, where some developers and publishers still relied on 2D. Those with an inkling of what the future held began to embrace the third dimension. Metal Gear Solid was the first gaming blockbuster that could rival the silver screen, with Resident Evil throw us into a building ripe with undead mysteries. See, this is just really nostalgic, like remembering the times. No game library can ever lived up. So this is what I really wanted to break down, because I feel like it's already happened and maybe this writer hasn't realized it. I really do feel like the Switch's library is unparalleled to any other video game library, and the PlayStation 2's library is probably second. Like, I gotta be honest, I think nothing new of the current generation lives up to it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like a PlayStation 5 advocate can speak up for me here, but I really do feel like PlayStation 2 and Switch are where it's at. During its lifespan, the PlayStation 2 became the default console for third-party developers and publishers due to its ease of development and unending popularity. Many would soon pull support for the Xbox and GameCube because they weren't worth the resources, leading most games to sell and look best on Sony's console, no matter who made them. Combined with an industry-leading slate of executives, I have to imagine others looking upon the PlayStation 2 with envious eyes during its historic run. So I will give this to PlayStation 2's credit. At its time, it was a powerhouse of a console, compared to Xbox and GameCube. It had the same capabilities. You could do the same with it. In some cases, maybe with GameCube, you could do a little more. So a third-party developer powerhouse, sure. I mean, everyone could develop for that console. It was easy to develop for. The Wii U definitely suffered with that, and the Switch did a lot to fix that. The Switch is basically just an Android machine. I mean, you can put anything on it, but it lacks the power. So there are definitely games that can't come over, and it definitely hurts the library in that sense. I feel like we can talk more about what the Switch has to make up for it, but it definitely hurts it in that sense. I mean, having like Marvel Rivals is huge right now, and they talked about how they just can't make the game work on Switch in a way they feel is quality and competent, and that hurts the library for sure. And it's a way that the PlayStation 2's library was never hurt, because it was the best console at the time and on top of its game. One of the earliest successes came in the form of GTA 3. The same goes for Metal Gear Solid, Sons of Liberty, and Snake Eater. Yeah, the Metal Gear obviously was huge for that console. And then other games like Burnout, Tony Hawk, Kingdom Hearts, Resident Evil, Onimusha, God of War, Guitar Hero, Ratchet & Clank, Call of Duty, and Persona, all huge games. And we'll never get a console like it again either. Okay, so that's what they really focused on here for the library, and how it, shaped the video game landscape, which, yeah, definitely did. I said that off the rip and at the start, definitely did. I don't know what point to compare first, but while I've got the shaping the landscape highlighted, the Switch is very new, but we've already seen the Switch and its games shape the landscape. I mean, Breath of the Wild is 8 years old, and because of that, we have Genshin Impact and Elden Ring. Two games that were massively inspired by Breath of the Wild. The developers themselves said so. And so many other games have been inspired by Breath of the Wild already. Breath of the Wild and the Switch, in that sense, has already shaped the video game landscape and will continue to do so moving into the future. I mean, there will be so many games coming out for the rest of video game time that will reference Breath of the Wild as an inspiration for their video game in some shape or form. So too for a lot of games on the console, but just to focus on that one as they were focusing on GTA, the Switch, we're very early on, so we haven't seen the big effects of it, the biggest effects of it, but even just looking at Elden Ring as one example of the Switch doing exactly what the PlayStation 2 has done. I mean, I think it's apples and oranges, whatever you want to say. Credit to PlayStation 2, but if we are going down this avenue of it can't live up, I think the Switch has lived up. Let's give the Switch its flowers here. Then they listed a ton of great games that came to the console. Now, it was a different era, but interestingly, I did look up list of best-selling PlayStation 2 games, and the best-selling PlayStation 2 game is 17.3 million, and then, it drops down from there. We have 5 that broke the 10 million, and then we have about 5 more that broke the 5 million, and so on. We look at Switch, and it's a different story. I mean, we're in 70 million, 50 million, 30 millions, 20 millions. I mean, this is living up. You know what I mean? This is living up. And then we compare like the types of games. So yeah, we have the GTAs, we have the Gran Turismos, we have the Final Fantasies. Very like gritty sort of PlayStation 2 mature games when you look at them. Then we have the Switch lineup. It's a different genre for sure. We have the more family, fun at their core kind of games. Breath of the Wild is about as gritty as we're getting here. But we have a similar list of diverse games all from Nintendo. But it's definitely like two sides of a coin. We have the more mature market, and then we have the more family-friendly fun market. In saying that, though, both are fantastic. Both have done a lot for the video game industry and its influence. I mean, look at Animal Crossing, for example, and all its influence. And if you just want to talk about living up in the sense of like sales and sheer numbers and popularity, I mean, come on. The other thing I want to mention too is nothing will take away these games releasing first time on this console and what it did to shape the industry. But if you want to talk about a library of games, this is on Switch, 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 this is on Switch through streaming, but still, this is on Switch. I mean, God of War, no. Ratchet & Clank, no. So there are still some exclusives that are over on PlayStation's side. But if you want to take even just like the top 10 of these, maybe even like top 15, most of these are on Switch. Now, I know they didn't release on Switch first time. They didn't have the same impact. It's a little different when you port something over. But if we're talking about the library as a whole, the Switch has... Actually, let me show you this first. The PlayStation 2 has over 4,000 games, which is a fantastic number, especially for the time. The Switch has 12,000 games. Like, we're on a different level here for library, and a lot of PlayStation 2 games are on the Switch, sort of encapsulated in that, as well as a lot of Xbox 360 games, as well as a lot of early Nintendo games. Kip's calling me, and I don't know if I should answer because I'm making a video. I'm going to finish my video. In fact, this even says from the 8 years of the console, 72,897 people from 8,704 developers and publishers are credited with these 12,000 titles. Insane number. I don't even know how they figured that out, but let's not discredit these 73-ish thousand people, their Herculean efforts at bringing us what I really do believe is the biggest, most expansive, most influential, most incredible video game library of all time. 25 years later, and I do have to, in my honest opinion, say that the PlayStation 2 has been topped, that the PlayStation 2 has been lived up to. But not to discredit what this did, and it took a quarter of a century, in my opinion, to get something that could even be compared. Like this, the PlayStation 2, I honestly don't know where we would be without it, and we have been forever trying to best this, forever trying to beat this. And the gamer, I appreciate the sentiment here, but let's not get it twisted. It has finally happened. The Switch has finally toppled. I mean, the influential games of the PlayStation's 2 era, we have a similar influential game list here, if not even more impressive. And on top of that, we have all those PlayStation 2 games in here and all of video games from all of history's time in here. Like, it is actually quite incredible what Nintendo has managed to do. And I think where Nintendo lacks and where the Switch lacks, it is just in that raw power. So it cannot keep up with current day, and it is missing that huge gap in its market. It can't keep up with things like Marvel Rivals or a lot of these big third-party games that just can't fit on Switch realistically without massive downgrades. And that is where the PlayStation 2 in its time will always beat the Switch for sure. I'll give you that one. Hand over fist every day. The PlayStation 2 had that over Nintendo. But when Nintendo lacked that, it traded it for the portability, which is something also the PlayStation couldn't do. You couldn't take your games anywhere with you and play them anywhere on the go. So little of this, little of that. And I think the Switch 2 is only going to double down on this mentality because it's taking these 12,000 games into its generation and then adding to it, and it's going to be more powerful, and it will be able to play Marvel Rivals, hopefully, and all these other games, and maybe it'll be able to kind of merge that a bit if it's actually more powerful and can compete with the PlayStation 5 in some way, in a power way. If it can play things like Monster Hunter Wilds, for example, which would be insane because even a PC can't play that right now. It would be really cool to see.
Basing this off you. Hello, camera.
All right, bye. Like, comment, and hair flip on that subscribe button. You want to do a hair flip?
Flip on that subscribe button, guys.
Okay, bye.